We are Chagossian natives
and descendants.
Chagos Archipelago.
We want our voice to be heard. We want our views to be understood. And we want our heart to be felt.
My name is Jérôme Simon.
My name is Eugénie Iapa.
My name is Nancy Lena.
My name is Julia Cantal.
My name is Sophie Romeo.
My name is Marie Priscilla Idosai.
My name is Marie-France Gu.
My name is Mian Wang.
My name is Rosy Leveque.
My name is Joshua Wang Mingyan.
My name is David Victoire.
My name is Ivan.
My grandparents from my mother's side were born on Perros Banús, and my grandmother on my father's side on Diego Garcia.
My great-grandparent on my mother's side was born on Diego Garcia.
My granddad, his name was Albert Herbel, and he was from Perros Banús.
My mother and grandparents were born on the Perros Banús and Bodam Salomo groups of islands of Diego Garcia.
My mother was born on Perros Banús in 1940.
My parents and their parents before them for many generations were born on the island of Diego Garcia, part of the Chagos Archipelago.
My parents are both descendants of the Chagos Islanders, as my grandparents were born on Diego Garcia.
My grandmother was born on Perros Banús.
My grandmother was born on Perros Banús.
My grandparents were born on Perros Banús, Chagos Islands.
My grandparents of my father's side were born on Diego Garcia.
We wish to raise awareness of the Chagossian people's views, both the natives of the Chagos Islands and their descendants.
Chagossians do not agree with the United Kingdom and Mauritius negotiating for the future of our home.
Chagossians should be the one to decide under which state our islands are to be governed. This is not the decision of these governments.
Our right to self-determination is not being respected. Self-determination is for the Chagossian people.
Self-determination of people must be paramount and consistently applied to the peoples of the British Overseas Territories, including the BIOT. We have the right to decide on our own future.
The UK and Mauritius cannot negotiate sovereignty of the BIOT without consulting us, the Chagossian people.
We wish to remain British. We are British and we were determined to be part of the British family.
In her short time in office, Liz Truss made the decision to start negotiations with Mauritius without consulting with us first.
They say due to rulings against the UK at the United Nations and at the International Court of Justice, UK and Mauritius made the decision to go ahead with negotiations on the exercise of sovereignty over the Chagos Islands. What you don't know is that the Chagossian people have never been consulted. We wish to make our own future.
These very sensitive and discreet negotiations are not right. We will not wait until the agreements are signed by two states to then be asked what our opinion is. We are here to give our opinion now. And that is, we want BIOT to remain British.
We want a referendum for the Chagossian people. We should be the one making the decisions rather than two foreign governments deciding for our future for us.
History is repeating itself. In 1965, UK and Mauritius signed an agreement where Mauritius sold BIOT to the UK for £3 million to be used as a shared UK-US military base. Chagossians were not included in those negotiations or agreements.
Our parents, grandparents, great-grandparents were forcibly exiled and sent to live in poverty and suffered discrimination in Mauritius and the Seychelles. Mauritius did nothing to help our families. Today, we carry this generational trauma.
The Mauritius government have and continue to use the Chagossian people for their political and personal financial gains. They did so in the very first agreements in 1965. Mauritius sold our families for independence, textiles, and personal gain.
Chagossians are not Mauritian. We all have a unique culture and way of life. Chagossian is not Mauritian.
There are no groups represented by the Mauritian government, groups represented by the British government. No government represents us. No one has listened. We represent ourselves.
Give us an internationally recognized referendum for our people, the Chagossian people. Give us the right to decide our futures.
The security of the world will not be jeopardized by Chagossians living on the outer island near the American Air Force Base. All that will happen is the people will continue to exist and a home. Give us our home back.
Enough of this injustice and maltreatment of Chagossians.
Our culture and story must not be erased at the heart of bureaucracy, like so many before.
We are the people of the British Indian Ocean Territory.
We are the people of the British Indian Ocean Territory.
Bonjour, moi m'appelle Mériane Yabi, moi na 90 ans, moi suis né dans Perros Banos, l'île du coin. Je connais tout bien l'endroit là, comment été, comment vivre. Mais mon bétan dire qui est anglais avec Maurice Pépéa de négocier. Nous qui Chagossiens, nous devons décider, Chagossiens choisir qui est pour faire, qui pas pour faire. Personne pas choisir dans nos places. Laisse-nous même nous qui nous pouvons pas faire. Parce que nous tenons là-bas, nous grandissons là-bas. Après ça irait là, laisse-nous prendre nos décisions. Parce que l'endroit là, est pour nous. Depuis que je grandis, je connais nous dans l'armée anglaise. Après ça, va une manière de faire là. Je ne sais pas si les personnes connaissent qui peut arriver. Laisse-nous décider, nous décider, nous qui nous pouvons faire, nous Chagossiens. Parce que ça, pour nous, ça.
We are Chagossians. We are Chagossians. We are Chagossians. We are British citizens. We are British citizens. We are British citizens. We are the only British citizens
who can't go home
to our British overseas territory.
Let us go home
under British rule.
We demand to be involved at all levels for the right of return and self-determination. We do not wish to remain under the control of the Mauritius government.
Wherever you are, in any British overseas territory, is the concept of self-determination. We cannot negotiate sovereignty of a territory without the legitimacy of consultation of the islanders and the people who are originally from that territory, or the horse. And I would argue that, first of all, this government, if it has any intention to transfer even one of these 58 islands, needs to have a referendum of the Chagossian people, and they need to make a decision themselves rather than us even starting to negotiate with Mauritius. I want to raise at this stage the concept and the extraordinary need to make sure that these Chagossians are consulted. Nothing can erase the shame that we feel as British citizens that our ancestors treated the Chagossians in this way, to rip them away from their beautiful islands and to cast them. I hope the Chagossians, listening to this debate across the United Kingdom and in Mauritius and in the Seychelles, listen to us, listen to the strength of feeling that many of us have, to demonstrate to them that we, as a former imperial power, recognize the mistakes that we have made, and now, in the new modern era, will put at the very forefront the concept and integrity of self-determination. And if any of these islands are to be abandoned, then they can only be done so through the legitimacy and acceptance of the Chagossian people. Why are we negotiating with the Mauritius government before the Chagossians have been consulted.
The way they were then treated in Mauritius is really quite appalling. They've been treated as second-class citizens in that country, and the injustice upon injustice that they have suffered really is intolerable. But their future should be determined by them. And the prospect of, as has happened throughout the last half century or more, the prospects of their decision, their future being decided by London, by Port Louis, by the UN in New York, by the International Court in The Hague, or wherever else, is fundamentally wrong. Chagos Islanders must be able to determine their own future. The vast majority of the Chagos community that I represent, and I probably represent the largest Chagos community anywhere in the world, the vast majority, despite the appalling history that this country has visited on them, want to remain British, and they must be consulted.
I describe their removal from those islands at that era as the mother of all injustices. Forcibly having their crops burnt, their animals shot, and then being lined up on a boat to sail 800 nautical miles away to wherever, the Seychelles or Mauritius, to Port Louis, and to have their way of life ripped asunder. What is the most horrific stories I have heard in my 8 years in this place. And then, to compound what I have called the mother of all injustices, they then have the injustice of how they were then treated in Mauritius going forward. And so we've had 50 years of systemic sort of failure, failing these people who live in systemic poverty. It's passed on from generation to generation.
These people were abandoned by Britain. And in turn, in Mauritius, they face poverty, disease, and discrimination. The British government made a mistake. But mistakes can be excellent learning opportunities. And the first thing to do is to own the mistake. Admit when you get it wrong. And I think the British government have tried to right this historical injustice. They've recognised the Chagossians as British subjects, and there is now a thriving community here in the UK.